Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to hold a security cabinet meeting today to vote on a ceasefire proposal in Lebanon. The U.S. brokered deal has almost unanimous support in the Israeli cabinet and is likely to be approved. An Israeli source says a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah would begin soon after its announcement for 60 days. And this comes as Israeli Defense Forces send out new evacuation orders ahead of striking several Hezbollah targets across Beirut this morning. Chief International Correspondent James Longman joins me live now for more on all of that. James, what's the latest on this ceasefire proposal? Let's start there.
Yeah, look, Diane, I think we have to be very careful. We've been here before, not just in Lebanon, but with Gaza. One side briefs very heavily that they're close to a deal, and then it doesn't happen. But this is the most detail we've had on a possible deal to end the fighting in Lebanon. Been there for something like 8 weeks now, this Israeli incursion into Lebanon. In it, we understand that there would be a ceasefire of something like 60 days, during which you'd see a phased withdrawal of IDF troops out of Lebanon. Crucially, there wouldn't be an IDF buffer zone in the south. So that would mean, and I think that was a big sticking point, not just for Hezbollah, but also for the Lebanese government, about maintaining the integrity of the Lebanese state. Really worried about Israeli occupation in the south. That seems to have been something that the Israelis have conceded on. Then we get into some of the sticking points here, because it says that the Lebanese army will be stationed in southern Lebanon and ensure Hezbollah has cleared out of the area, along with the United Nations. Well, that was already the case. That's already what the Lebanese army have supposed to have been doing over the last few years, since 2006, anyway, when the last war happened, and the United Nations. We know that hasn't happened. Hezbollah remained in the south, carried on firing rockets into Israel. That's the whole reason why Israel went in. Is Hezbollah sufficiently weakened now that the Lebanese army is able to do that? Well, we'll have to wait and see. Crucially here, the United States seems to be having a role. The US will provide oversight on Hezbollah's exit from southern Lebanon. I mean, that sounds great, but what will that mean? Will there be US troops on the ground in Lebanon? I think that's very unlikely, but that could look like maybe intelligence sharing, drones, surveillance. We'll see. But here, I think, is where you're going to find a big sticking point. A lot of Lebanese people will be very worried about this, not just Hezbollah. It says the US and Israel have signed a side agreement. In it, the US pledges to back Israel's right to strike in Lebanon against critical or immediate threats from Hezbollah. That, essentially, the danger there is it normalizes Israeli operations in Lebanon. It gives Israel kind of an open-ended ability to continue striking. We're seeing, I mean, pictures now from this morning from Beirut, strikes across the country and in Beirut. So I don't think this leaves necessarily Lebanon, you know, in much of a sense of complete security. But it is, like I said, the most detail we've had. We now have to wait and see if, crucially, the Lebanese government agree to this and if Hezbollah agrees to this. But it looks like it might be a first step anyway, Diane.
James, this still has a lot of support in the Israeli cabinet, but Israel's national security minister is expected to vote against it. Why?
Look, Itamar Ben-Gvir is someone who the Biden administration actually accused of sowing chaos in Israel. He is someone who's known for his firebrand views. He's supported, or seemed to have supported, settler violence, which you've seen explode over the last year or so, calling settlers heroes who have murdered Palestinians. And he's been against ceasefires from the very beginning, not just in Lebanon, but in Gaza as well. It might not matter on this occasion because Benjamin Netanyahu is only in government with people like Itamar Ben-Gvir, because he had so little support from the rest of the spectrum of Israeli politics. On this occasion, it looks like he's got the Security Council behind him, the Security Cabinet, and they have all agreed on the finer details. So Itamar Ben-Gvir and others like him will say they don't want this agreement, but Netanyahu can afford to ignore them. Now, we'll wait and see if the agreement falls apart, if Hezbollah continues to fire in to Israel, if Israelis, crucially, cannot go back to their homes in the north of Israel, which is one of the reason that Israel wants to be able to sign this agreement, then we might see him gaining more traction. But for the moment, Benjamin Netanyahu seems to be able to ignore him. Diane?
And James, the IDF says they're attacking Hezbollah in Beirut on a, quote, large scale. What does that mean? What's happening there, and could that impact these negotiations?
We tend to see before ceasefire agreements all over the world in places like this an uptick in violence just before an agreement is made. And that might be what we're seeing this morning. 3 huge explosions across Beirut, not just in the Dahia suburb, we think, where one of them might have struck this morning, which is the Hezbollah area in the south of Beirut, but in Basta, which is right in the middle, downtown Beirut. If you Google Lebanon and it says Beirut, behind that word is Basta. So it really is downtown Beirut. So it's terrifying for the people of Lebanon and Beirut. These sorts of strikes they've been dealing with over many weeks now. Some of the strikes we know that Israel launches in order to target individuals, so they don't give notice because these are assassination attempts. Other strikes, they give a little bit of notice, some 20 minutes or so, but so often they come in the night and no one gets any notice. But we'll see if these were strikes intended to come before a ceasefire agreement or if it's just more of the same. Diana?
All right, Chief International Correspondent James Longman. James, thank you.